welcome into Gray Television's Media Days craze. How y'all feeling? Day 2, we got a good lineup. We have Oklahoma.
It's a beautiful venue, first of all. Having it at the Omni Hotel in Dallas, it really is amazing.
I mean, Texas is a fun time, Will.
Yeah, this is my 12th SEC Media Days. So this is about as well done as any of them have been. So they've done a fantastic job here at the Omni.
I'm Bailey, right?
12 and first time. So
this is my first time here.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of Big 12 Media Days, which actually is in Dallas as well, but this is 10 times better. I'm Bailey Burmaster, Aaron Mukes, Will West. Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to talk all Day 2 has to offer. We have Oklahoma in the mix today. We have Tennessee in the mix, Missouri, and then, of course, we have to talk about national championship favorite Georgia. Let's talk about these preseason rankings a little bit and where we see these teams and if we agree or disagree, so to speak. So you got Georgia, Texas, Alabama. I thought it was interesting Texas was over Alabama. I thought it was a little disrespectful to the Tide.
I mean, when you look at where Texas was last year, obviously the coaching change, I think, was a big thing. You lose Saban, even though Kalen DeBoer showed that he was able to take a team to a national championship game. I think that Texas probably deserves to be there just based on that alone. But Alabama's always going to be in the mix, and I don't think SEC or anybody really wanted to put Alabama too far, and that reflects at number 3.
Yeah, new systems, right? So there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be a learning curve, I think, a little bit. And the other side of it is, remember, with the schedules, they're not equitable like they used to be. Used to, the SEC West played the SEC West. The SEC East played the SEC East, and then your cross opponent. Now it's all over the place. Alabama has an incredibly difficult schedule this year. Texas, pretty easy. So I do think that plays a part of it too, is that most people think Texas 11-1, Alabama 10-2.
And it's wild because there are schedules for some of these teams that I'm like, that's a gauntlet. Like Georgia has a gauntlet of a schedule too.
They do. Oklahoma does as well.
Yeah. And I can't remember if it was Ole Miss or Mizzou. Maybe I'll have to look it up. But kind of has a cupcake.
Oh, they're
schedule.
playing high school teams. Yeah, it's incredible.
Like it's like Georgia Southern and like you're like, what are we doing? Like you're going so you're automatically a shoo-in for the new 12-team playoff format.
Yeah, and then you get those teams, they're playing, like Georgia, the tough ones, they're playing at home.
Yeah.
So it is a nice schedule for teams like Ole Miss.
It's very interesting. Ole Miss comes at 4, LSU 5, Mizzou 6. Are we buying into the Rebels stock this year? Because I think I might be.
I know I am. I am buying into their stock. I think what Lane has been able to do there, specifically over the past couple of seasons in the transfer portal,
65 in the last 3 years. That's insane.
He just has a way with getting these guys to come there, and I think we're going to see that kind of come together this year. And I definitely think they're a playoff team. Now, can they get beyond that and over the hump? We'll have to see, but they're definitely a playoff team.
They're one of those teams that has an easy schedule as well. Ole Miss, Missouri both have incredibly easy schedules compared to what they've had in the past. So this year's Ole Miss team could be a team that would be 9-3, 8-4 in a normal year in the SEC West, and you could go 10-2 this year just because of the strength of schedule not being that high. And if you look at the total win totals, I believe that Vegas has for most of the teams on Ole Miss schedule, I want to say they play 2 teams that has more than an 8 win total. So you're playing LSU, you're playing Georgia, and then a lot of teams that you're going to be a double-digit favorite against.
Is Mizzou a dark horse in the SEC this year? They're coming off that massive win in the Cotton Bowl over Ohio State. They have one of the more prolific offenses in the conference, and I mean, you don't want to overlook them, but at the same time, they kind of put everyone on notice last year. They went from being unranked to one of the top 10 teams.
And they did a great job in the transfer portal. They didn't bring in a ton of guys, but the guys they did bring in really panned out for them. They also have Brady Cook, who's a fantastic quarterback. Luther Burden probably is going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. So if you can block, you can tackle, and then you have great skill position players, you're going to do pretty well. How do they replace Cody Schrader? That's going to be the one thing that I wonder with them, because I thought he did a fantastic job with some of that outside zone stuff that Missouri likes to run.
I think defensively, losing the defensive coordinator might cause some problems there on the defensive side of football. Like you said, offensively, with Luther Burden, the best wide receiver in the game to me. I think they're going to be explosive, as we've seen in the past, and they're going to give team fits no matter what.
Whose seat is the hottest? When you look at, is it Vanderbilt, South Carolina?
Billy Napier at Florida.
I was about to say.
Because that is a gauntlet of, when you want to talk about gauntlet of a schedule, that is a gauntlet of a schedule. I think they play the AFC North. You know what I mean? It's they're outside of the state of Florida. It's incredible how difficult the schedule is. He kind of made mistakes, I think, in the way that he started with NIL of, we're not going to do NIL for the first year. So he's a year behind in his recruiting cycle. They're in the blue chip ratio if you look at the number of 4- and 5-star guys that they have on their roster from a talent perspective, but they're all young. and you have a brutal schedule. The offensive system he's trying to use is very conservative. Graham Mertz is kind of a West Coast quarterback or a game manager quarterback, and I just don't know that Florida's even going to get to 6-6 this year. And does he survive if that happens?
Are we sold on Graham Mertz?
I think he is what he is.
Immediately shook his head.
No, I mean, I don't think there's anything special there. Like you said, he is what he is. And I think that's kind of the Florida team in general, right? There's nothing that we can really point to and say they're really great at this and this is what they're going to present. And I think when you're in a conference like the SEC, you just can't have that. You have to be special at something. We see the Georgia defenses or the Alabama defenses of the past or the Ole Miss offense, LSU's offense from last year. If you don't have something special to point to, you're going to struggle in this conference.
I think he's a quarterback that won't lose you games, but he's definitely not going to win you games either.
No.
So if you have a strong running game and then he's running play action, I think you can be fine there. But look what this conference is right now, especially you're adding Texas and Oklahoma to it. So you have Jackson Arnold and a really nice offensive system at Oklahoma. We'll see if they run the same system they did last year. Texas has Quinn Ewers, who's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So you add those guys, plus Alabama is going to be even more offensive with Kalen DeBoer there. Tennessee is going to run 96 plays a game. That's what they're going to do. LSU promoted their passing game coordinator to offensive coordinator this year, and he's going to throw the ball all over the yard. So if you're the team that's conservative offensively, you have to be great on the ground or you have to be great defensively, and I don't think Florida's either one of those things. So then you'll be starting from behind. Can Graham Mertz throw the ball 40 times a game and win for you if you're Florida? I don't think that's the case.
I want to dive into every team that's here for day 2 of SEC Media Days, but before we do that, I want to recap Commissioner Greg Sankey and some of the things that I thought he talked about yesterday that were very intriguing. The first one is 16 teams, no divisions. He was pressed multiple times in a row. Is it going to stay 16 teams? And he kind of was stern in his answer while also beating around the bush of it's 16 today and 16 tomorrow. And someone even asked for clarification of, okay, well, does that mean tomorrow as in tomorrow or like the future of tomorrow? And there was still no clear answer. What do you make? You think there's more teams to come to the SEC in the near future?
I think it's inevitable. I think he said what he had to say, right? You're not going to get up there and say, yeah, we're going to get more teams in here. I think it was appropriate for kind of the landscape of yesterday. But I think we're all on the same page. We know that this conference is going to continue to expand. There's already talks of the Florida States and the Clemsons going through their stuff in the ACC. So it's not a shock to me if in a few years we're talking about more teams added to this conference.
I think that they're staying at 16 until their television partners tell them to not stay at 16, and there's enough money that can be brought in right now. So I think his plan is to stay at 16, but I don't think any of us know. I mean, coming up this fall in this academic year, you have to pay $2.8 billion out. College football does to past players, plus $22 million per year out to current players and student athletes. So where are you going to be financially? If you find yourself where you're in a place where, and we still don't know if there won't be more lawsuits beyond that. We just know this is where it ends so far. So I think that right now he would like to stay at 16, and he's happy at 16, but does the ground shift underneath him and force him to have to take on more teams? Remember, Kyle Whittingham said last week at Big 12 Media Days, we're 2 to 5 years away from having 2 20-team super conferences. Kyle Whittingham said it kind of got it, throws things out like that. So the Utah coach. So I think that they're at 16 now, but do I think they'll be at 16 in 5 years? Absolutely not.
And it's so funny. Someone brought up a great point yesterday. It was like 3 years ago, if you would have said this would be the new future, you go, no, you're crazy. And now we're all like, it's probably just going to be one big super conference, and we're all going to figure it out from there and whatnot. Something else he brought up that was interesting, obviously, comm system now, and also the iPads. How do we see the iPads making a big impact in the game now?
I think it'll be big for the players. I think Kirby talked about this when he was up there. The coaches are communicating. They're guys, eyes in the sky. They've already seen stuff. But having adjustments on the fly for players to see visually what the mistakes are, what they can adjust on, is going to be huge on the sidelines. This is something, to me, that should have happened a long time ago. The fact that they were in this kind of Stone Age mentality of not using technology. When we watch high school football teams having this stuff available on the sidelines, for me, it's a positive thing. It's going to take some time for the players to get used to, but I think it's an exciting thing for the players to kind of be able to navigate the adjustments they need to make in-game. And it kind of takes away from the coaches a little bit. They don't have to be, I guess, as smart in their game planning and making changes on the fly.
You'll see more in-game, in drive, in-quarter changes as opposed to waiting to making adjustments at the half. That's the one that we see in the NFL because they're going to use the iPads and they can get the position groups together and say, okay, this isn't working, we're doing this. I think we'll see the same thing in college football, is that you'll see more in-game changes as opposed to halftime.
And isn't that the crazy thing? I feel like just in the last year alone, we have pushed the college game so much closer to the NFL game. I mean, I think about that in terms of it's going to be a longer season with the 12-team format for playoffs. And I was talking to Kirby earlier, but I asked him, I was like, do you change what you do? Because the season's longer. You're going to get injured. How do you? And they said they are definitely going to change what they do for preseason and make it lighter because it's now more about longevity. Do we like that it's going closer to the NFL, or do we wish it was more kind of the old school college days?
From a business model, I think it's the smart move.
Yeah.
It's look at the NFL. I think last year 93 of the top 100 television broadcasts in America in 2023 were NFL games. So that's the right move from a business perspective. I also think that you're preparing these kids for the league and speaking to agents and things like that throughout my career. The number one reason that a kid chooses to go to a college is they'll get me ready for the NFL. So I think you have to move scheme closer to the NFL. You have to move everything business-wise closer to what the NFL is doing right now. But there are fans who are – it's college football steeped in tradition. Their fans are going to be upset that it's going to be more and more like pro football, but I don't think that they're going to put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah, the diehard fans that want to see the traditions, I think they're always just going to be on that side of it. But you talk about moving it closer to the NFL game. I mean, NIL is as close to free agency right now as you're going to probably
it's
get.
It's messier than free agency.
It is. It is. And the players are taking advantage of it, but that is breeding into the NFL. Like, you can see that landscape starting to shift that way. Again, I think it's a positive as well. That season becoming long, getting these players to play 15 games now, if you're going to the national championship, maybe 16 games, that's close to an NFL regular season. It's going to prepare them from a physical and a mental mindset. Does it have any long-term kind of effects, or we'll have to wait and see for that.
You'll play more guys on your roster.
Yeah.
That's the one big thing that's going to happen is that right now you see there are a lot of young guys that don't play a lot. You'll see younger guys, I think,
how
play
much
more.
is that going to expose some of these teams in the SEC?
Probably a good bit.
Because I could look at all those teams in the 16, I'm going at least 8 probably past some of their starters.
Yeah, top heavy. If the teams
you
that are
ain't
top
got
heavy,
the depth that you
struggle.
think
No,
you do.
not at all. Not at all.
And I think that's worrisome. And I also think going off of NIL and going more towards the college game, there's that fine line of these athletes. I do think as a college athlete, these athletes should get paid. They should get their slice of the pie. But they also don't want to be seen as an employee of the university. And there's a very fine line there. And it's interesting to see how this will all progress. And, I asked Kirby today. I thought we were talking about NIL, and I just said, as we get our boots more wet in this, what's been the hardest part of this that you kind of didn't see? He was like, recruiting. And he didn't even call it conversations. He's like, they're negotiations. And it takes away to where, yes, we're going to give money to the people who should be getting the money and are going to be on the field. But at the same point, like, I'm selling you on Georgia. If you're not going to get here and do what you need to do at the end of the day, then what are we doing?
And a lot of it right now is them making sure they keep their current players on their roster. And then it just seems like within the transfer portal, everybody just trades backups. And can I get something out of this backup? Maybe you can get something out of the backup that I didn't have. And they're handing out $200,000-$300,000 to back up offensive linemen right now to try to find someone that can be a starter. And other than that, you just bring your guys in, and because high school recruits are all making about the same amount of money.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things it doesn't get talked about very often, but when you translate this game to the NFL game, is the fact of the backups leaving because they're not getting playing time or they're not on the field. I've heard mixed feelings. Some coaches like it, some coaches don't.
It's soft. I'm old school.
It's soft. I'm the same way.
So I played soccer at Oklahoma State. I walked on, okay, but by my senior year, I was a full ride. And there was a point where I wanted to transfer, and my parents were like, that's not how we do it. You're going to stick it out. And I was like, all right, well, I guess we're going to do this. And I'm so, looking back, it taught me so much, but also I'm happy I stuck it out for my own reasons. And I ended up being a part of the team and being captain my senior year and making an impact. And it meant a lot more. And it also taught me about just perseverance in life. Yeah. But now it's like, oh, well, I'm not getting what I need here. I'll just go somewhere else.
It's business,
it
right?
Is.
And it's like I cover Tennessee. They had a basketball player, Jonas Sadu, who left and went to Arkansas. I don't know, this was football media days, but he was going to make about triple the amount of money to go to Arkansas with John Calipari. How do you make the decision to try to stick it out with, even if you love the coach, when there's that much money on the table?
But I think that's the hard part for me. That is a 5% reality for everyone that plays college sports.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe I'm saying this because I'm a woman, but you think the women athletes are getting these deals? Maybe Livy Dunn, Okay, like
Very
once.
few.
Yeah.
Correct.
Very few.
It's not the, but it's not the reality for a lot of the football guys too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Garrett Nussmeyer actually spoke yesterday about how he stuck behind Jaden Daniels, and that he had opportunities to transfer, but he just didn't want to. He felt like he got a calling. This was supposed to be where he was at, and he didn't want to take the easy road. He wanted to compete, and I think that's big. I think that says a lot about the player he is, and I would like to see more of that in college football. I think it's kind of going away from that, but I do respect the players that stick it out, that want to make an impact, and then by their senior year, when they do get their opportunity, they take advantage of it. And we see sometimes sitting on the bench actually helps you learn and you grow, and then you're more mature.
I mean, it makes me think of Joe Burrow a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, that's that model, right? And I guess I low-key just called him soft, going back to that period. But you know, he reaped the benefits of it, and it worked out for him. So you have, at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you, and I'm not going to be mad at anyone for chasing the bag, but I do think it's just a change of the times, and it's very interesting to see how it progresses, and I don't know what the future holds, and I don't know what it looks like, but I think, you know, it was interesting. Sankey was talking about how, you know, on their student-athlete panel, a lot of them, they would talk to the athletes, and it was like, what do you want? And they want it to be across the board even, because it's not with different state legislation. I think that was fair, and they also still wanted it to be competitive, and I liked that. How true can we stay to those pillars? I think remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, especially there's no salary cap, players aren't employees, there's no collective bargaining agreement, so it's like NFL free agency, but with no parameters whatsoever.
Yeah.
Free for all.
Free for all. All right, let's dive into some of these teams. Let's start with the top dog, no pun intended. National championship favorite, again, the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, what can you not like about this team? Let's start with the quarterback, because Carson Beck decides to return. I asked him earlier what went into that. And he was like, why would I not want to return to a team like this? He goes, it was really hard to walk away from the players and the camaraderie and the atmosphere they have around this team. Now, he didn't say this, but I have a feeling losing that SEC championship to Alabama left a sour taste in his mouth, and he wanted to come back to prove something. But where do you see Carson Beck? There's a lot of talk that he could arguably be the best quarterback in the field this year. True or false?
Definitely true. Heisman Trophy candidate out of the gate. I think he has unfinished business, and I think that's really what it's about for him. When they walked off that field against Alabama, you could see it. They felt like they were the better team, and they just didn't play well that day. To me, Carson Beck does everything right. He speaks to the media right. He does everything right on the field. He's a leader of men in that locker room. I think his ceiling is exponentially through the roof. What he brings to this team is different than what they've had in the past than the Stetson Bennett. His size, his ability to throw the football from a talent perspective is bigger and better than what they've had.
His composure really, really impressed me last year.
He's never rattled, ever.
No.
He's pretty much even killed the entire game no matter what's going on. And for a team like Georgia, when you have so many talented players around you, you just need somebody that's that steady hand to just not allow the team to get too high or too low. And I think Carson does a good job of that.
I think right now we're picking like a kickball game on the playground in grade school. I would take Carson Beck as my quarterback over anybody else in the nation. People talk about how off-platform throws and being able into mobility for a quarterback, and those things are great. 80% of the plays a quarterback makes are going to be in the pocket. So how quickly do you disseminate information? Do you have the arm strength to be able to go deep? He can do both of those. He understands his offense. He knows all of the if-then questions that you have within his offense with Mike Bobo. So I think Carson Beck's the start of it. Plus, he's a quarterback that has a great offensive line in front of him.
Yep.
And if you have even Tom Brady struggled at times when he didn't have an offensive line. Patrick Mahomes has struggled when he didn't have blocking in front of him.
But isn't that the age-old, like, how good is he when everything around you is also a Ferrari?
That's
so
football.
he
the ultimate team sport.
Like,
he just has to be
efficient. You're going to hate him for good circumstances?
Yeah, but he has to be efficient, and he is. So he does everything you need within that offense, and when something breaks down, he can make a play because of his arm strength. So I think Carson Beck's the dude.
I was really impressed. I don't want to say not sold. I just wanted to see a good sample size. And I think it was that Auburn game where it was a close game. He showed a lot of grit, was able to drive him down. But it was his composure that got me. And then as your season go on, you see him make these stupid throws to Lad McConkey, and you're like, okay,
where did that come from, right?
That was a zip.
Yeah,
that was a zip.
And you talk about circumstances. That game's circumstances were great. The defense couldn't stop the run. The quarterback was running all over them. And he had to make plays when it mattered, and he did. And I think those moments help his maturity. And now year 2 in the system of, being the starter and knowing he's the guy, he's been able to manage those expectations. And he spoke about this, talking about how he doesn't care about the individual accolades. He just knows when he puts his best foot forward and the team does well, that all of those other things will come. And I think that's the mindset you have to have.
So going into the 2024 season, do you believe that Georgia is the team to beat within the SEC?
Yeah, by a country mile. Honestly, I would be, if you gave me Georgia or the field to win the SEC this year, I'll take Georgia all day long. You have better players. You have the best coach. You probably have the best coach in the nation now that Nick Saban's retired. All of the pieces are there. Georgia definitely has.
We got to talk about that too, because obviously Kirby and Nick Saban are connected. And I was asking him, I was just like, how different does today feel, given that, Saban's hung up his whistle, he's taken a mic, he's one of us now. And I was like, is it hard talking to him about Georgia? He goes, I had to do a 15-minute call with him, and I felt like I was giving secrets to Darth Vader. And I was like, that's a good soundbite. But can you blame him? You're
absolutely.
Used to Saban low-key kind of handling you at points, and then he's no longer there. And now I think Kirby is arguably the best coach.
He's the guy. Well, especially the other guy, Jim Harbaugh's gone.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
So the other, he right now Dabo's not doing business in the new way. So that leaves Kirby, who has a ring that still is in college football right now.
What do you see from this Georgia defense? Are they going to be as powerful as we're used to seeing Georgia's defense? Even though last year they had moments early on where it was not the standard that it was. I think they were a few games without a turnover, and then finally something clicked mid-season.
Yeah, I think defensively they'll still be good. This team has had a way of sending guys to the NFL and then just replacing them. Mm-hmm. And actually, Michael was talking about that earlier. It's just the next man mentality, and people are saying about how good he is, and he was like, man, they'll just replace me tomorrow with another guy that's just as good as me, and they've continued to do that. I think the one thing I want to see improvement from this year is the pressure. Defensively, they were 12th, I think, in creating tackles for losses and getting to the quarterback, and they still were the best defense in the SEC. So I think they're going to be strong again. They have a number of returning players. That defensive line should be stronger this year, but I think that pressure on the quarterback and generating those sacks and tackles for losses are going to be key.
Aaron mentioned it, right? You know what you get with a Kirby defense. We saw it when he was a defensive coordinator to now that he's at Georgia. Linebackers are going to be unbelievably disciplined. Corners are going to be physical. What happens on the defensive line? So can they improve even more on the defensive line? That just makes them even more dominant. And it's like, I don't know. It's like putting an extra couple guns on the Death Star, and you don't know what to do.
I'll be interested to see what happens at corner, too, as they figure out that position. But let's switch to offense with weapons. No Brock Bowers, no Ladd McConkey. Is it Dominic Lovett's year to step up?
Stacey Searles will have the offensive line right. They will run the football well, and if you can run the football and teams have to put 6 or 7 in the box, football's a numbers game these days, especially on the offensive side. So 6 guys in the box, we do this. 7 guys in the box, we do that. They will be able to run the football with that offensive line well enough that Carson Beck will he could throw to me and Aaron, and I think that Georgia would be fine.
Hey, man, I did play wide receiver.
There you go.
Could you catch it?
I was a lineman, so.
But I think he said it. We've seen wide receivers come through Georgia, and it could be the 4th, 5th guy, and they're still making an impact. They're going to run the football. ETN transfers. Yep. He'll get some opportunities. I think Bell. I think Lovett. They had a transfer come in from Vandy. They're deep enough to where they're going to go and make plays. Yes, it hurts you lose Bowers. It hurts you lose Ladd McConkey. But I really was impressed with Oscar Delp when he came in for Brock last year. So having him.
High expectations for him.
Yeah, I think Georgia will be fine. They're going to throw to a number of guys. And, again, we speak about depth earlier. They're a team that has depth. They're going to use all their guys. And I think offensively they won't miss a beat. Before
we go talk Tennessee, I want to talk about the off-field issues with Georgia. Tickets and arrest are now up to 24 after 2 more were booked for speeding and racing last week. I'm not even going to put this on Kirby because Kirby is ripping these guys any chance to be like, what are we doing? We've talked about this in depth. How do you get a rein on this, and how do you get through to these kids?
I think Kirby is and we have had him in Knoxville, these types of coaches. He is the kind of guy that I coach football. That's what I do. You guys handle this. Nick Saban was not that. Nick Saban was, you do this in my program, I'm going to come throw things at you. And so I think that there have been times that Lindell White, there's a story that's pretty famous in college football circles about Lindell White being at a party he didn't need to be at, and Pete Carroll showing up to the party at 1 a.m. I think Kirby's the kind of guy that we do this on the field and off the field. That's the schools. Kirby's going to have to step in a way that he probably doesn't want to, that he probably feels uncomfortable doing. But he's going to have to keep better tabs on his players and be the one that's the disciplinarian there, instead of leaving it to the portions of the school where the people are supposed to be the disciplinarians.
It's hard, I think, for Kirby, too. That I think he has that old school mentality, and now we talk about NIL. These kids have money now. They can go out and do things, have opportunities, and those opportunities kind of put you in a position to maybe you're doing things you shouldn't be doing. And like you mentioned, Kirby's going to have to step in at some point and say, hey, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. Again, it's not something he wants to do, but I think at some point he will have to do it. It's just it's the nature of the beast. The college kids have changed. I have a college kid myself. College kids have changed over time, their environment, their circumstances. These are young men that are just trying to learn how to live in the world. And sometimes it takes somebody at Kirby's stature to really get him in line. So he might have to take that opportunity.
I do wish that, like at the NFL, it's not Roger Goodell, or it's not the coach, it's not Mike Tomlin punishing an Antonio Brown. It's Roger Goodell. So at some point, when we, especially as the SEC makes more big business and we have more of an NFL model here, Greg Sankey or somebody in his office needs to step in on these types of situations. Situation we had with Oklahoma State, where the kid has a DUI, gets nothing.
Yeah.
And like where the Big 12 commissioner needs to be, you can't trust coaches because the coaches have a heart for the players. They're going to want the player to, they're going to believe the players.
Well,
and that you won't do it next time, right?
So let's talk about that. I went to Oklahoma State. I saw that and was like, oh, no.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like that was more strategic on Gundy's part.
Oh, for sure.
Because all of a sudden, what are we talking about?
We're talking about
We're
that.
talking about Gundy.
Yeah.
We're not talking about Ollie anymore.
Yep.
And I thought that was honestly strategic of like, oh, he's saying, look over here and let's get this out of here.
Yeah, pretty strategic. But to your point, that's who's going to sanction it. Who's going to come down and lay down the hammer. Eventually somebody has to do it, or it's going to continue to get out of control. And we don't want to see these things happen. Nobody likes when somebody's getting arrested, or we saw what happened last year with Georgia. We just can't have situations like that continue to happen.
We're right across from the big SEC logo on the wall right now here at the Omni in Dallas. Somebody has to protect that shield the way that Roger Goodell protects the shield for the NFL.
Absolutely. Georgia's schedule, and I want to rattle it off here before we move to Tennessee. They open up against Clemson, Tennessee Tech, at Kentucky, at Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, at Texas. That is like the circled one for everyone in the SEC. Florida, at Ole Miss, another big one. Tennessee, UMass, and then they round out with Georgia Tech. Think about this. If they go on a national championship run and they make it to the big game, they will play at the Benz 4 times. They open against Clemson in the Aflac Kickoff Bowl, SEC Championship. The Peach Bowl is a semifinal, which is at the Benz. And then, guess what? You host another national championship, the first night to host it twice in Atlanta.
If they get through that schedule, on the road at Alabama, on the road at Texas, on the road at Ole Miss, they deserve it.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
I agree.
I'll say this. If anyone can get through that schedule, it's probably the Georgia Bulldogs.
Probably is.
That's right.
All right, let's pivot to Tennessee. They finished in the top 20 of the AP poll in back-to-back seasons, something that has not happened in 19 years. Do we give Josh Heupel enough credit?
Probably not. He's done an amazing job.
We really has.
And one thing that I don't think people know, 36 players left before he was hired because there were situations where, I mean, now would be a big deal, but Jeremy Pruitt and his coaching staff handing out Chick-fil-A bags full of cash to players, and then those players would have been ineligible, so they needed to transfer out. They did. So he started out with, I don't know, 50 players or so on his roster and was able to win 7 games year 1, 11 games year 2. Last year, Tennessee won 9 games.
27 wins in
so
3 years.
The fact that he can do that with that roster in that situation, I will say he's doing it slowly in the way that he's rebuilding his roster, but his system's incredible. There's a reason why Brent Venables at Oklahoma went and hired Jeff Levy, because he wanted that system. Other people are coming in to Josh Heupel to try to learn his system. So the system is pretty incredible. It's taking what Art Briles did and then snapping the ball within 4 seconds if possible. And he has done just an incredible job at a place that with a proud tradition, great fans. But, man, Tennessee has been terrible. A lot of that, they kept hiring people no other SEC school would hire because they thought they were the smartest guy in the room. But Josh Heupel's done a pretty amazing job based on the roster that
I
he's
just
had.
feel like we don't talk about him enough, at least in the SEC. And
On
maybe
the podium today, he said this is his most complete depth-wise roster, and it's taken him 3 years
to
get to where he wanted to get. And I feel strongly that he's going to continue to grow this program. He's done a great job.
Outside of James Pierce, there seems to be a little bit concerned with his defense. What do you make of that, Will?
Well, the linebacking core should be great. It was bad last year, and you were playing freshmen because the linebackers you had weren't great. 2 years ago, you had to convert a running back to linebacker, and you literally had 2 healthy guys. You pulled a guy out of your SID's office that was a grad student that had a year of eligibility to be your third linebacker. That's what they had 2 years ago when they won 11 games.
Yeah.
Last season, you were playing freshman. So now you have Keenan Pili, who's back, who's like dang near my age, and he's like 26. And he's going to be back this year. Plus, you have Arian Carter, who's a monster, but he was a freshman last year. And so linebackers will be great. Defensive line, Amari Thomas is an NFL guy. They have a ton of depth there. James Pierce is going to be a top 5, top 10 pick in the draft. And then you get to the secondary. It's not going to be great. They don't have anyone who's really started. They have a guy named Christian Charles who would have been a starter and ended up tearing his Achilles. So he'll be a starter at one corner most likely. The rest of it, though, look, honestly, last year it was bad. And if the guys that are on the roster now couldn't beat the guys out last year, it makes you wonder how bad they are. But the second 2 years ago when Tennessee won 11 games, they had the 128th ranked pass defense in the nation.
Yep.
So Josh Heupel's offense can make up for the fact that your secondary is kind of an abomination.
Does it? I think some of that goes into the way they play offense, right? Because when their offense isn't clicking right out of the gate, they're 3 and out, they're 3 and out, they're 3 and out quick. Defense gets tired. It's hard to stop people. The back end specifically, which is why they struggle so much in the secondary. I guess one name that has been talked about a lot is Boo Carter. And as the freshman coming in, that might be able to help on that side of the ball. But I think the offensive style of Heupel is always going to lend to the defense probably not being that strong, at least statistically, because of the amount of offensive plays he's running and how quickly, when they do struggle offensively, they're going 3 and out and the defense is on the field so much.
If Nico can handle his business
Well,
at quarterback, then
you took the words out of my mouth.
Tennessee's
That's what I
gonna win
wanted to
10
ask.
games.
Nico, I'm not going to butcher that last name. I've practiced it, and I'm like, you know what? We're calling him Nico, and we're sticking with it. Is that where we're at?
No, it's Nico.
Okay,
no one
great.
says anything else.
Yeah.
Like Tua, Nico.
Yeah, I'm like, let's not do that to ourselves.
Okay.
But Nico, what would you say? What do you see from him? Because, like, you look at him, and he looks like he's got the makings to be it, but do we believe he can really help Tennessee?
He disseminates information very quickly. He makes decisions very quickly. In Heupel's offense, you have to do that. Joe Milton never did that last year. He was a guy that liked to slow it down, read the whole field, set up his chessboard. You don't do that in Heupel's offense, so it was a bad fit. Nico makes decisions quickly. But against Iowa, he had 5 touchdowns, but he was 11 of 19 passing. So there is still a long way to go for Nico, and I think you'll see growing pains in the first half of the season, especially. Long term, though, I think he's an NFL quarterback. I do. He's a franchise quarterback within the next 2 years. Where is he going to be this year, though? That's the big question.
I think that experience in the bowl game kind of is something to look forward to. You give a guy like that some experience heading into this year, I think that's going to do wonders for him.
Quickly, where does Tennessee end up this year?
I think they're 9-3. I think they'll lose a game. Tennessee's system and players. I watched them in 2 different games last year, the Florida game and the Missouri game quit. And you have a lot of the same players. Different quarterback, but a lot of the same players. When you see someone who will quit, you played.
Yeah.
When you see someone that you've watched them quit on the field before, you know that it's in them at all times, and at any point in time, it could rear its head again.
And you just see the attitude in the little moments as well.
Yeah.
What about
I like the 9-3 number. I probably would have leaned 8-4, but I like the 9-3 number. I definitely think if we get Nico to play where he can, then I think the 9 number is good.
All right, we're going to take a short break here on your SEC Media Days craze. Will West, Aaron Mukes, thank you for joining me. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to your SEC Rays. Bailey Burmaster joined by Lauren and Garrett. We're going to stick in Tennessee, Vanderbilt and Tennessee. But let's start with Vanderbilt. Spent a lot of time with them, obviously, bottom of the poll here for the SEC. Clark Lee might be in a little bit of a hot spot after sporting the worst record, Power 5. What is the feeling around this Vanderbilt team just needs to make any type of movement in the SEC this season?
Really, there was no place to go but up. And I think that's kind of what the takeaway was. Speaking to all of them, Langston Patterson, a guy who's graduated from CPA, is a Vanderbilt guy through and through, basically said two's not okay. It will never be okay. We have to get better, and what the offseason was about. He just said it wasn't just a facelift, it was an everything lift, basically what the Commodores are hoping for.
Yeah, and on that, Vandy went 0-8 in the SEC. No over in your conference, right? So when we were talking to the guys, they took that very lightly. Many of them we spoke to, and you can imagine it, right, getting recruited to an school, said, I've been a winner. I'm used to win. So that losing season was really, really difficult, and they've got to work this offseason to retool the entire from who's a leader on the team to some coaching staff additions with the offense, Tim Beck, to how they're going to even present the deal with Clark Lee taking over in that department. So they've really pitched this as a Vanderbilt team, and they're feeling optimistic about what they could accomplish.
Do you buy into it?
Garrett, I'll let you go first.
So, you mentioned the hot seat.
Yep.
And Clark Lee is a pretty proven record. He was a very successful defensive coordinator recently. I think this is his way of, okay, I'm going to put more on the team. And he says he's energized by it. He gets to do more of the coaching and teaching now. But I think this is his way of controlling the outcome a little bit more by being a coordinator that is basically, right in with all of the guys. So I don't know how that'll go, because that's a really hard to do, head coaching and defensive play calling. As for talent, on the offensive side of the ball, who knows? They are basically bringing a large portion of their roster in from New Mexico State. It's basically the Vanderbilt at this point, coming over with their offensive coordinator, Tim Beck. I don't know how those guys will do. New Mexico State did beat Auburn last year, so maybe there's a little bit of SEC magic there. But the talent is going to be offense that I watch, because you lost a pretty decent receiver room, truly. London Humphreys going to Georgia. There's a reason the Bulldogs poached. Will Shepard goes to Colorado. So on the offensive ball, there's a lot of question marks.
Yeah, and I buy into the fact, Bailey, that this season is going to be for Vanderbilt. I do see that they have the pieces to be better. Of course, the bar is low. How much better, I'm not sure. I think they could get 1 to 3 wins, potentially. You would hope, right? But I think they could potentially get 1 to 3 in the conference. Their schedule, based on the pieces that they've gathered as well, especially with quarterback position. Garrett mentioned transfers like Nate Utah as well as Diego Pavia from New Mexico State there. Clark told us about guys like Blaze Berlowitz and really a deep courtroom. And so they feel like, wow, we have this foundation for fantastic quarterback competition, that this is only going to breed good things for us.
That's the thing, is who is going to be the quarterback. At some point, too many cooks in the kitchen is bad. And last year it was a bit of a carousel. You had Ken Seals, or is it going to be A.J. Swin, back and forth.
You know what the saying is, if you have multiple quarterbacks, you don't
have a quarterback.
Right.
Exactly. And in the SEC, we know that means a problem is coming. So I don't know who is going to be it. A little bit undersized, very gritty guy, big-time wrestler, and has maybe a chip on his shoulder coming over from New Mexico State. Berlowitz bigger. You have a Nate Johnson who's coming from Utah, very successful for him in recent years. So it obviously all starts with that position, but there's going to be eyes on that offense, because Clark Lee, I think you should progress with that defense. Can't get much worse than what it was last year.
In no winning season in the end seasons, do you believe Vanderbilt can have a winning season?
Honestly, I'm not sure this is the year that they come to a winning season. I think that they're just going to need a runway to start stacking success. it takes a lot of coaches, right? Some time to build momentum. And based on what Vanderbilt is coming off, I mean, I think that they're just start building wins and get close a 500 season bowl contention before they look a 500 mark at a winning record.
Last year was pretty abysmal. Before they won 5 games. They were knocking on the door of bowl ability. I don't think that a winning record is impossible. I don't think it is very likely for the most part.
The reason I would know is because of their schedule. It's not an easy schedule. Open with Virginia Tech. You're at Georgia State, which they just hired. Del McGee, who was at Georgia. He's going to try and turn that program into
Very
something.
short turnaround one, though.
Correct. But that's not one you can overlook if you're Vanderbilt.
If you're coming off a 2-10 year, exactly.
Correct. At Missouri, Alabama, Kentucky, Ball State, okay, Texas, at Auburn, Carolina, at LSU, and then Tennessee. That's not necessarily, it's not much worse SEC schedules, but that's not an easy one, actually, if you're Vanderbilt.
I think the Kentucky game is a question mark. I think the South Carolina game could be a question mark, but nothing is any means, and also Vanderbilt hasn't given everyone a reason to. So, you know, if I'm going to say they have a chance at SEC games, it's definitely those. You're looking at Tennessee. You're looking at Alabama. Yeah, Texas is at home, but guess what? They're still Texas, and that's fine.
And some of the guys were telling us yesterday that they're revel the fact that they could play spoiler. They could be a surprise to some people. It's possible when they match up with some of the more mortal, pulling out the Alabamas of the mix. But I think that could be within reach for this Commodores squad.
All right, well, let's transition to Vols. Josh Heupel, 27 wins. We were just talking about this. Does he get enough love in Tennessee?
In a volunteer
In
state, yes, he
Tennessee,
does.
But I don't know if he does.
I might agree with that. The realm that we're in right now in the context of the entire SEC and everyone conference, I don't know that Heupel is yet viewed as a Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, and sure, he hasn't won the national titles to warrant that status yet, but in terms of his ascension, he is not a conversation that perhaps they were in their ascension years.
If we're talking Kiffin in that matter, you should be talking about Josh Heupel in that matter.
There's some more drama surrounding Kiffin,
Well,
so I
'cause
think it's a bit of a hot button.
character,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
He's a charismatic. He's probably one of the more charismatic coaches. But when you're looking from an analytical standpoint of what they've done for the program, I just feel like Josh Heupel doesn't get that recognition. But you say differently in Knoxville today.
All across the
And
state.
stretching to Nashville, yep.
Yeah, it's pretty. They really do love him, and it is warranted. You know, we've seen him put this program back firmly on its feet now. I don't see any doubt to that. I don't think that he has come away with his signature moment yet, and whether that's a championship or something else, who knows? I do obviously think that win at Alabama at home was massive, but that was really big for the state of Tennessee. Postseason success that's going to come in. Now, if he makes it to a college football playoff, or 65 days from now, we could be having a much different conversation, because this is a team has the possibility to do that. Now it's just about, hey, I am coach as these other guys, and I can prove it.
And I think it'll be interesting to see what Josh Heupel can get out of the redshirt freshman quarterback, Maliava, who is this 5-star recruit. He had all of this in varying categories coming into Tennessee. Right, Coach Hype's perfect match there. But, I mean, Milton wasn't exactly the spark plug to that Tennessee offense, and Hooker was, and so you just saw moments where you were expecting this explosive play, or you were simply expecting a punch Tennessee. I was covering the game at Alabama last year, and the second all tied. Tennessee had no answer, and so that put, I think, of a damper on the Josh Heupel high-powered offense that everyone likes to talk about. Bailey's point, it just took a slight step down here, and to Joe Milton's credit, you know, I think he played as best he could within his ability. But I think Nico could perhaps chase all the creativity and excitement that we know Josh Heupel is capable of drawing up on offense.
Going off of that, though, what is Nico's ceiling?
That's the thing. I mean, he is a long, tall. He's pretty charismatic. He's not too loud, and the guys say he's starting to own some, but he has all the physical tools that he needs. A little bit ago over in the electronic media room, Heupel was saying favorite things is how he digests plays over the middle of the field. So if the IQ that is needed to succeed at quarterback, especially in the, that's going to be, there is no ceiling. He is limitless. But physically, what I've been very pleasantly surprised in him is how mobile he is. He's a very tall guy, and I'm sure he will put on a little bit more weight and fill out into his frame. He's still he can move, and he is not afraid to get out and run. You know, is he going to be racking up yards constantly every game? No, I think they're going to want to try and spread and use the weapons that Heupel has around him. But he is close-ish to a dual threat. He will score, let's say, at least 5 to 7 rushing touchdowns this year because he likes to get up and move.
And you made an interesting point about his body, right? Because the question about his, I think, is a really tough one to answer because you're talking about a much smaller frame who really has not grown into being a
Joe Milton
physically and physiologically,
yeah.
right? And so I think the fun part about college football is many of these guys, and they do look like kids. How well can some of these younger, smaller frame players match up with the biggest men SEC can offer? And can you outsmart athletic some of those really strong defensive fronts that you're going to see? And that's where we might learn a little bit more about what Nico's and what he's capable
and on the other side of that spectrum, you have James Pierce. What do you think his ceiling is this season? We've talked about Nico limitless, but growing a little bit, not in every aspect of the game. But, I mean, James Pierce that's on his way to the NFL.
Oh, I mean, he is already kind of pocket at some point.
Yeah,
people are throwing out,
slotted in.
where is he going to go in the draft? And will he go in the top 15 picks? That seems to be what people are saying. He's surprising nobody. People know who he is. He is going to act and move and flinch and twitch on the field. A lot of tape on him. Unbelievable year last year. So, Tennessee have the other guys around him towards the front to be able to draw some attention, but also is he going to be able to have replicated season from us last year?
Yeah, and James Pierce Jr., just a nightmare on the edge. We've seen so many edge rushers get big money in the NFL, so it's surely going to be one of those guys from everything we've seen, from everything we even heard today, and his teammates and how he carries himself, and just the insane athletic ability that he possesses that you can't teach.
And that's important especially for their defensive backs. They had, I'm not going to say a massive revolving door or anything, but they lost some guys that were in the secondary, so their front, especially a guy like James Pierce, if he comes up and plays very well, hopefully the defense can make another stride if you're a Vols fan.
Go ahead. Yeah, and I was going to say, I don't think the Tennessee defense necessarily gain, and understandably so, when the offense is the focal point of what they do. But they were second in the SEC in sacks last year. So the defense is a bit understated, but we heard from the players today and Amari Thomas, and they're looking to assert themselves to the top of the conversation a little to Tennessee and really be looked at as that three-level complementary football type of team where the defense can be just as imposing offense.
So where did the Volunteers land this year?
That's the question, because there's a lot of question marks surrounding other people. I think Ole Miss is a very good shot, very good football team. What happens to Alabama? You have a brand new head coach, a lot of turnover on a roster. Putting us on the spot with this one.
I'll say this. I look at their schedule. Let's not get it twisted. They have big matchups,
Yeah.
right? They come to Athens, Kentucky, Alabama. They go to Oklahoma. Those are big games. But let's say, they could actually win a decent amount of these. I do think if we're around 9-3.
I would say definitely be knocking on the door of 10-2. Somewhere between 3, 4, 5 teams, again, depending on those other question marks. But if Yava is really what they say he is, they have a definite chance to contend.
And I was going to say, I would think nightmare scenario, worst case finish for Tennessee would be 6th. And as you mentioned, it's a byproduct of their schedule in part. And I would think better scenario, they could finish as high as 2nd in the league because there are a lot of games that you look at, well, even if you consider the returning players, that the Vols should be able to take care of a lot of these opponents.
Absolutely. You know, something that's new is the 12-team playoff format. For it or against it as football fans, not like sports anchor add-on, like as football fans, do you enjoy it?
I'm here for it. I think that the 12-team format makes much more to me as a sports fan who has consumed a larger and not necessarily, I mean, you can't compare it to March Madness for basketball, but when you think about pro sports and the way the brackets are designed and who gets a bye and playing your way into basically a quarterfinal or semifinal round, I think that's exciting. That's how you get the feeling that it's more of a true champion. The 4-team playoff certainly was an upgrade from before, but I think the 12-team makes much more sense, especially in the shape of college football and the way conferences are changing so rapidly.
I mean, up to the idea. I was
He's on the other side of the spectrum.
I was maybe 18 because if 12 teams, sometimes there is a large gap between a team and a 12 team.
But do you believe it leaves room for chaos?
And that's the beautiful part. And you brought up March Madness. That's a great thing to bring up because sure are we going to see that as much football and basketball, very different games, very different sports. But you never know because an injury or a big or whatever it might be can change everything. And at the end of the day, matter a lot of times we want to watch more sports and to be able
more
to
money.
Exactly, incorporate more fan bases. You know, there's been a lot of times, you know, certain schools have been instantly left on the outside looking in, knocking on the door, asking to be let in, and now teams, you know, if you're a Tennessee Volunteer fan or whatever it is, your odds are drastically higher, and it is very realistic to have a chance.
3 or 4 teams are probably going to make it from the SEC, at least, and it's going to be interesting. It definitely makes the season longer. We're going to have to shift the mindset, I believe, of teams just a little bit. Georgia head coach Kirby Smart talked about that, about how they'll take it a little bit easier season for the mere fact that longevity and being healthy is key because, you know, it's not who you play, it's when you play them. So if you're losing, you know, 3 of your best to injury because the season's a little bit longer, that's less the deal. Who is your prediction to take the SEC this season?
Texas comes in, kicks the door down, and takes it. I think
Texas back guy, everybody.
I think that they will surprise because Georgia Union is probably the best team. But what Sark stuff, something in that Longhorn water, I guess, has been working very well recently. Are they the best team? No, I think Georgia's probably the best, but I still think Texas, whatever voodoo working in their way, and I think they win it this year.
I would Georgia voodoo and make Georgia. I could see Emma making a run at it again. I mean, they're bringing back quite a few guys who made for them last year when people didn't think Alabama was going to make the playoff. And regardless of how contentious their spot was, they were in there. And I could see Alabama being in contention, but my pick Georgia.
Okay, before we go to break, who's your dark horse of?
Ooh.
I already brought up
Garrett's
Ole
is
Miss.
Ole Miss, right?
Like Jackson Dart. Maybe it's just his name. I don't know, but something, Lane Kiffin thing's working over there.
His voodoo's working on you.
Yeah, hey. I think that I would not want to play. Do I think that they're the best team? No, but some team just stick in your side like a thorn, don't go away, and if that happens in a film, who knows?
I could see it being Oklahoma, and for a similar reason, Texas. I think they have enough quality team that they could come into the SEC and make some noise, a game here and there that people wouldn't expect them to, and perhaps just have a first outing than people might think of this Oklahoma team.
I believe Oklahoma might a little bit more than you're used to. I think they were the main blue blood in the Big 12. I think Bremen, I think it was 2022, they had their first losing season in the 23, something crazy like that. Got it back on tracks. Still a very ball team. They're definitely going to win some games in the SEC, but Give me Mizzou, a little dark horse. Why not? I'll buy into the hype of winning the Cotton Bowl over State and having one of the more prolific offenses. What's not to buy in for a little dark horse with Mizzou?
If I was a defensive coordinator, I would be terrible to play that offense. That's some nightmare stuff. Luther Burden,
is.
just phenomenal. That offense was. I got to watch it last year in person at Vanderbilt, and it was literally a machine. They knew exactly where they were when they needed to be there. It was beautiful.
And what they needed to do. That's the truth. Garrett, thank you guys for joining us. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll return on your SEC Media Day Craze live stream. Stick with us. Welcome back into your Media Days Craze. I'm Bailey Burr. Day 2 officially underway. Had the opportunity to catch up with Georgia quarterback Carson Beck earlier to talk about the big reason he returned, what the expectations for this Bulldog is, and if they have a little bit of vengeance on their shoulder heading into this season, dropping that SEC championship to Alabama. He basically said that a big reason he returned to Georgia was for the feel and atmosphere that he felt around the team, and to come back and he wanted to do something special with those guys. But he's very Scott joining me here to talk a little bit about everything of Day 2 Media Days. Carson Beck, his poise, his composure, and his arm have just really, I think it was week 5 last year against Auburn, he just kind of took off and really solidified himself as the next in coming of, we're going, how are you going to replace Stetson Bennett? And he's definitely found his way into the groove that's Georgia offense.
Oh, definitely. First off, thanks for having me on. It's going to be a fun time. And, earlier today at the press conference, this is my first time just kind of hearing Carson Beck in the flesh, and he's even more poised and confident in person than he is on the TV screen. I remember when he was just kind of coming up, about the job. We didn't really know if it was totally his yet, of course, because Stetson's gone. And I think he really surpassed a lot of expectations. He looks a lot beefier, too, which is pretty important for the quarterback position. And you can just tell he kind of has a little bit of the eye of the tiger. Obviously, it's not the way that Georgia wanted to end the year last year. One loss in the year, and it's in the SEC championship. And I think Carson is kind of leading these guys to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, even though they're definitely a top team.
What did you take away from his press conference? You said you listened into it. Any nuggets come out, and you were like, "That's what I want to remember about this."
It was just the fact that, like, I mean, there's been so many questions all week long about this college football video game, but like, this answer he gave me was like kind of the most unique. Like, I don't care about the rating, like, on the game. Like, I'm gonna rate myself. Just the way he kind of said it, his attitude, the kind of body. That's the kind of things I like to see out of a quarterback. Body language, facial expressions, just what you say out of the mouth.
Well, he said it earlier, too, when we were talking about, just different acts of what the outside noise might be. And he goes, no one out there is going to out me that I haven't said 10 times worse to myself. And I realize that I think I'm very much like that. But when you see that and you hear that from a player on your team who you're hoping is going to take you to a national championship, that is something you want to hear, especially in college football where the right quarterback is everything.
Oh, that is 100%. And, another thing I think, too, is that he's many weapons to use, but he's really grown into his own to where it's not like the core to be what beats you, right? He leads this team. It's not like he, costs his team by being an unsafe guy. He's definitely picked up a lot of skill. A couple targets, of course, was with the tight end Brock and wide receiver, but just having that year of experience as well helps the younger guys who are coming into it.
All right, we're going to take a short break here on your Days Craze. Stick with us. We're going to have a lot more coming up after the break. Welcome back to your media day. Now joined by Chris Doring, college football analyst, former Gator receiver in the league. What are days like today like for you coming back to some
It's
SEC
awesome.
news?
It's great for a couple of reasons. One, it's the signal of the unofficial, and it means it's right around the corner. But I think, too, this is it in a way. Getting a chance to see Oklahoma and Texas here for the first time. Teams from the SEC may be able to qualify for an expanded 12-team playoff. A lot of juice. And I know there's a lot of negativity about NIL stuff and transfer and all the uncertainty about the congressional finances that are going to work in the future. Today, this week, I feel like it's only been about a lot of connection with this league and a lot of this season, despite all of those things going on.
What do you make of the new look? Teams, no more divisions, and then you're adding the former Big 12 blue bloods.
Yeah, I like it because it's symmetrical. 16 teams feels like a nice battle. But I also, I kind of got some about the loss of the divisions. I was playing in the league in '92 into the Eastern and Western divisions, and so seeing that go away is a little sad. But I think with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, we inherit the Red River rivalry.
Yep.
It's being renewed again with
Texas
A&M, OU, and Missouri, Texas. So that'll be fun. But I'm curious as to. We're not playing anymore, so some of the familiar games within the league will go away. But what new teams? When I was here in the early '90s, I played much before the divisions got split up, and then all of a sudden Tennessee and Florida are playing every year in the league. It became an instant rivalry. So what games are between traditional SEC teams, and then also how about to Austin?
Austin.
Or
That's the one everyone has circled.
Yeah, I mean, it's about what some of these new rivalries and the anticipation fans have for going to North in the future.
What teams are you paying attention to in the SEC this year?
Surprise!
Give me a little bit of a mixture. The ones you typically want to pay attention to, but maybe horse as well.
Yeah, well, Georgia obviously is at the top there. It's interesting what Alabama will be without Nick Saban, and Kalen DeBoer is a great replacement. How long does it take them to get up to speed? I'd say, lines is Missouri and Ole Miss last year doing what they did for each of them. How do they back that up with another opportunity and compete for a national championship? And then who's going to be this year sixth in the East last year?
Went unranked and then they're in the state.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great story and a great example of what kind of come out of nowhere and establish yourself as a real legitimate. So I think Tennessee could be one of those teams. The predicted games, I think they win 10 games. I don't think Florida gets to their in the playoff conversation, but I do think 4.5 wins is probably win 7 this year. And then what about Kentucky? We don't even talk.
No, that is very valid. No one is talking about Kentucky.
And usually Kentucky's talked about as maybe the second best team in the East, or a team that they've had two 10-win seasons. I think in the last 6 years, been able to break through. So I think especially with what happened with Missouri, Kentucky fans are like, what about us? It's our turn.
Well, and they have Brock Vandegrift, too.
Yeah, I mean, a new offensive coordinator. You got a new quarterback, but it's resigned to getting back to being that physical team that they've kind of coached in the SEC, which is crazy to think about. But I really do know who they are, and I think sometimes when they're not being talked, those are the best years that Kentucky has.
You brought up Florida. I want to talk about Florida. How do you evaluate where they are right now, and how hot is Billy Napier's seat right now?
Frustrating. I think he inherited a little bit of a challenge, and I think that he's done a great job in narrowing the talent differential from where some of the top teams are and where Florida is. 5% of their defensive snaps last year came from true freshmen, and that's a recipe for some growing pains, which they struggle through. They did a nice job of going out in the portal and bringing in some veteran, experienced guys. I'm a Graham Mertz. I think Graham Mertz is not talked about enough for what he did.
Which is interesting. Like, I've gauged different people, and some people are like, I mean, he is what he is.
Anybody says that has not watched what he did. Now, and I did a game this year, and I did their spring game last year.
Okay.
And when he came to Gainesville, I asked her, I said, why are we going out to get Graham Mertz? I mean, didn't really cite anybody at Wisconsin. And he said, well, the things that he's going to be able to do in our fit his skill set. Going out of shotgun. They never went out of shotgun. It's better for him to see the field, better for him to be able to get the ball out. And in this offense, we give him just about every play a tag at the end to allow him to the best play possible. He's one of the smartest guys that Coach Napier's ever been around. Putting trust in him out on the field to make sure Florida's in the right play at all times is something I think he's been tasked with. And I think, not that it's his duty, but he's accepted it, and that's being a mentor for DJ Lagway. Lagway, the friendship that those two guys have and the respect that they have for him is pretty cool, and I think it's going to benefit Lagway and his development considerably.
For a short time, so I wanted to ask you this. During your time at Florida, you started as a walk. How do you feel like NIL has changed the experience for a walk-on?
Well, the thing that I'm most worried about is the potential elimination of walk-ons. I mean, that was a conversation we were having back in May after, Congress is, and how do you handle all the different budgets and things like walk-ons? It's part of the fabric of college football. I was a walk-on back in the day, but recently Stetson Bennett, the seasons that he had, 2 national championships. Look, Cody Schrader last year, a walk-on that went for over 1,000. Texas A&M, their whole 12th man thing is based upon normal students and the student coming out and helping on special teams. So that's the thing that I am most concerned about, is just making sure that guys that may be overlooked opportunity to chase their dreams and what those guys do, even if they don't ever step on the field, the appreciation for being a part of the team is important.
That is absolutely correct. I was walk-on myself, so I asked that. I was very curious.
There's a walk-on bond.
You get it.
I was ashamed of, but I embrace it now because it's part of what made me.
Absolutely. Chris, thank you for joining us. We're going to
pleasure
take a
being
short
with you.
break. Media Days, Craig, stick with us. We'll be right back.
separate from this year. But every single year we have the same mindset, the same goal, the same standard. Everything's the same. We approach it the same. We're going to practice the same. We're going to work out the same. So, we believe in our culture and what we do and how we approach it, and it'll just continue to go that way as the years go.
In the last 3 years, you guys are 42-2. What tactics can Kirby use this year to just keep that winning mentality going? Because you have to find it's hard to believe just once you're winning at that rate to keep it up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult, especially in the SEC, to win at that high. How do you maintain that high level? And kind of like I just said, is just doing the same things over and over. We believe in what we do, and going into the summer, going into fall camp, we're going to maintain that, and then we'll bring it into the season as we always do.
You're arguably one of the best quarterbacks in this year's college football class. What are your own goals this season?
I think the biggest thing for me is just stepping up as a leader. I think last year I started to kind of go into that role more as the season went on. I wanted to kind of prove myself before I asserted myself in that way. But now that I've been through a season, now that I'm coming back in my second, I think I've gained the trust of the guys around me. And, just stepping up as that in that leadership role is going to be big time for me.
In addition, the SEC is going to look a little different. No divisions, 16 teams, the addition of Oklahoma and Texas. What does that do as far as just revamping this conference?
Yeah, obviously it's a lot different. There's no East, no West. And then adding two really good teams into the SEC with a conference that already has so much talent. Just adding that, obviously, it makes it more fun. And that's why you come to Georgia. That's why you come to a place like Georgia or another SEC school, is to play against good, talented teams like that every week.
How do you approach y'all's schedule? Because people could say that it's definitely a gauntlet.
I mean, like I just said, that's why you come to Georgia. You come to Georgia to play in those big-time games, whether it's on the road, whether it's at home. I mean, you want to play that type of talent so that, once you get to the next level, you're prepared. But also at this level, it's a lot of fun.
So that was Carson Beck, but there are some other new bloods in the conference, Texas and Oklahoma joining forces. It's been talked about all week because it is the thing to look forward to when you think about the SEC, 16 teams, no divisions. But what can you say, Scott, about Jackson Arnold, who is going to be this quarterback for Oklahoma, who has quite the history of producing quarterbacks? Now, that was under Lincoln Riley, not necessarily Brent Venables, but still prominent when it comes to quarterback discussions.
Oh, and, most definitely, obviously, when Lincoln was there, that was the place to go if you're a quarterback. Obviously, still needs to be a little bit said what's going to go down with Brent Venables. Oklahoma's offensive coordinator is now the head coach at Mississippi State, so now Arnold kind of has to learn from a newer guy in his second year of college football. So it's kind of like a wait-and-see game, but just from what I saw, just personally, of Jackson Arnold last year, I liked what I saw. I did. I know they didn't get the result they wanted in the bowl game, but obviously he's going to have all the physical attributes in the world. He plays for Oklahoma. I think it's just about piecing it together and hoping that they got the right fit to replace a really good offensive coordinator in Jeff Levy.
I think what I'm looking at is how does he adjust to the SEC?
Yeah.
Coming from the Big 12 where there's, been lots of talk about the defenses not being so great.
Easy. we easy because I played
I know,
soccer in the Big
Oklahoma
12.
State,
I'm sensitive to those remarks.
But you didn't play football,
no,
and the defenses have been known to struggle.
I do think it was a time where it was a very valid thing.
Correct.
But now where these offenses are more air raid, I think it's a moot point because everyone's airing it out. There's high scores in the SEC too, and you never say, "Oh, their defenses, they're weak."
LSU Ole Miss last year.
Very true. Well, LSU is a terrible defense last year. Let's just make that very clear. They were absolutely terrible, actually worse than their history of their actual program.
113th.
So, yeah, it was bad. But I do think there's an adjustment period. No matter what we say, the SEC is different than the Big 12, which is different than the Pac-12 or what used to be the Pac-12. And it's going to take time for him to kind of transition into that. Being a sophomore, I think there's growth and there's room for growth there. And you mentioned the coordinators trying to get used to a style and feeling comfortable within an offense is a big part of playing quarterback. So him making those adjustments, maybe not this year. Maybe it's down the line, a year or so down the road. But the promise is there. He has the physical attributes to make all the throws, to do everything you need to do at the quarterback position. Is it just going to come to fruition on the field each and every Saturday?
So let's talk about Brent Venables. And if you're not watching the SEC, you may not know some of these storylines in the Big 12. I have connections to Oklahoma. You probably are aware of this too. So Lincoln Riley loses the a matchup in the Big 12 against Oklahoma State rival. And almost immediately after that game, They're not going to the Big 12 championship. He says, goodbye, I'm going to USC. OU fans were sour.
Oh, yeah.
And they are still sour. Has Brent Venables really lived up to the hype, though, for where Oklahoma is used to being?
It was always going to be, I think it was always going to be a hard thing to take over when something that drastic happened, because I remember the Lincoln Riley thing. It was so drastic. It was such a big deal.
It was jaw-dropping.
Of course it was. I mean, because Brian Kelly followed shortly after that. 2 jaw-dropping decisions, right? But because all the players left, of course, Caleb Williams left. That was like the biggest domino to fall. I think Brent Venables was always supposed to struggle in year 1, but I think he really turned it around last year. I did not expect Oklahoma to win 10 games. I didn't. Obviously, different quarterback, new OC this year, but obviously he's got a little bit of a tune in there, right? Definitely a good tune with defenses as well. We saw that at Clemson. So I think this is the year, even though first season in the SEC, you need to say, all right, this is the one that really defines whether or not he's going to lead Oklahoma.
Does he find that success, Aaron?
No. I mean, it's a lot of pressure. Not only did you go into Oklahoma following Lincoln Riley, now you move a conference into a conference that's
You
already,
can even own the Big 12, which everyone, if it's such a down conference,
and you're going
it
to come
should
to
be
the
light
SEC.
work.
Yeah.
They did hand Texas their only regular season loss last year.
Yeah, but that's
That's
always
a rivalry game.
The Red River
Like,
rivalry
we
is.
know on any given Saturday when those two teams play, anything can happen.
Can we talk about this too? The SEC finally gets the Red River rivalry. Do they understand like what comes with that and playing and the fair? And I mean, we're here in Dallas. Have you guys ever been to one of those games?
No,
I have not been. I think what we saw when they were in the Big 12, now expand that by 100% being in the SEC.
I think it's bigger.
It's going to be such a production, first of all. That's going to be great being in the media. We love
Yeah.
that type of production. I don't even know if the two programs really understand what it's going to be like until they face it. It's going to be exciting, that's for sure. I just don't. I think if we expect Oklahoma just to come in, even Texas for that matter, just to come in and fit right in with the SEC, I think it takes time. I think this is something that they're going to have to grow into. I'm not saying they can't do well. I'm not saying they can't win games or make it to a playoff. I just think it's going to take time to adjust. The coaches talk about this all the time. It's not just one Saturday where you have a big game. Every week when you go to Auburn and Ole Miss and then Georgia and Bama, like when you put these teams back to back to back to get your team up each and every Saturday for that type of game, it's tough to do.
I don't think they'll find the success early on. I'm not saying they can't be successful. I just don't think they're going to be used to, like, we only lost 2 games this season.
Right.
Like, this is the SEC. I will say this. I do think each team will have a welcome to the SEC moment where, you know, whether it's on the road at Ole Miss getting throttled, there's going to be one of those games where you're like, haha, like everyone from the SEC is welcome.
Wait till they go play in Auburn.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, regardless of whether Auburn's good or bad, you go play in Auburn, it's a different atmosphere.
Mississippi State with those cowbells.
It's different.
Now, listen, OU and Texas are used to the paddle people at Oklahoma State. I will say the stadium is right on top of them, and you're hitting those paddles. Like, you are this close to getting hit.
Do you still own one?
So, you want to hear I actually have a really cool story about one of the paddles. So, when you are an athlete at Oklahoma State, your senior year, when you have your senior game, the paddle people show up to your game no matter what sport you play, and they give you your own paddle. So, yes, I still have my very own paddle. Now, I do not go to the games, and I'm not doing this thing, but I love the people that do.
That's awesome. It is going to be a different atmosphere when they show up to these stadiums, and it will take time. Now, again, we're talking about athletes. Many athletes have this way of just tuning stuff out and just playing the game, especially once the nerves wear off when it first starts. But there's going to be an adjustment and a transition period for both Oklahoma and Texas, from not just the players to the coaches to the administration to how they travel and get to where it's going to be an adjustment period.
I think you brought up a great point, not to cut anybody off here, but I think it's so exact. Athletes do, especially nowadays too, with so much media around us, they definitely are better at tuning things out, because a lot of these guys grew up with social media. They grew up watching every form of media you can. But I also think that you mentioned it too. Yes, there is going to be a welcome to the SEC moment, but I also feel like we all kind of make a little bit of a bigger deal than it may be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. It's going to be interesting to see how they fare. I think that's what everyone wants to see. It's just like, oh, what's going on? I've even been talking to some of the other media members that are from OU and from Texas and cover those teams, and they're like, yeah, this is big. Like, this is – because usually Big 12 Media Days is like at the Star in Arlington, and it's a big deal, but this is just a different feel. Let's talk about Oklahoma in the sense of their O-line play. What do you see from them? Because it doesn't seem like they're returning too many starters.
No, not at all. But, you also have to wonder about, again, I think it all kind of goes back to Jeff Lebby as well. I mean, after just kind of speaking at Mississippi State, what the players have said, reading what former players have said, he was really in tune with everything, right? So if they got the right guy there at Oklahoma this year, and obviously recruiting bodies and stuff like that, if they're all kind of in tune, Jackson Arnold should be protected, but I think it's going to be one of those things where you're going up against SEC defenses, and I guess once conference play starts, that's when you're really going to find out. Obviously, in non-conference play, that's a struggle. Good luck.
I think it's bigger in the run game. I think in the SEC, you have to be able to run the football. And creating gaps and creating holes and establishing that offensive momentum starts in the run game. So that offensive line is going to go through its bumps and bruises. I do think they'll put enough in place to manage throughout. But if they cannot run the football and you have a young quarterback who's trying to learn, like I said, good luck in this conference. I think Venables will find a way to run the football, and I think they're going to rely heavily on that run game in order to not put so much pressure on Arnold.
And when I don't want to say this how it's going to come out, but I don't know another way to say it.
Just say it.
Do you feel like since Brent Venables took over, every position group has kind of just taken a tiny step back? Think about it. When they used to have the Samaje Perines, the Joe Mixons at quarterback, you had Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts coming in. Like, you have all these people.
It speaks to the allure of recruiting, though, right? And getting those big-name guys. And I think the move to the SEC, part of that plays into it, trying to attract.
You think it will attract more, too?
Absolutely, because the NIL money is going to get bigger because of being in the SEC.
I agree and disagree. I agree and disagree. I think you're right. But then there's also the standpoint of they were getting these guys before,
Different coach, though. I mean,
Lincoln
gets everybody.
But that's what I'm getting at.
But that's the
because
thing is you're right.
Because they knew you could he's going to turn you into some. You go to Tulane, and he's like, you're going to be a first overall pick.
Yeah.
I'd probably go to Tulane. I'm like, I'm going to be a better quarterback, stick it out for a year. We're not going to win too many games, but then I'm going to make the money in the NFL. Now, I guess that's where NIL comes in a little bit more. You're like, okay, now I can go to Tennessee. They're going to pay me some, and then maybe I can still make it in the draft. It's just so different now and messy.
Your point is well taken. At the end of the day, college recruiting is a lot about the NIL, but players are attracted to coaches and who they feel is going to get them to the level they want to get to. We've seen this when guys leave. When the Lincoln Riley left, it was Caleb Williams going with them.
Yep.
Caleb was going to get money wherever he went, but being with the guy that he felt comfortable playing for is a big part of that. And we've seen this. We've seen it at Georgia with Kirby. Guys want to go there to play for Kirby. Guys want to go play for Saban. And there are very few coaches, I think Lane Kiffin is one of them, who does a really good job of just relating to the players of today. And it's been one of the talking points about Kirby. They still sell Georgia, and Bama sells Bama. Yeah. But guys like Norvell at Florida State or Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, they're selling themselves and saying, this is what I can do for you. And those are the guys that are the best recruiters in the country right now, and getting guys from the transfer portal and at high school level because of their connection with those teenage players.
Can I put you guys on the spot for a second?
Yeah.
Pretend you're Lane Kiffin. How are you recruiting a player? Like, can you do your best impersonation of what Lane Kiffin is saying to, like, get players in the building?
I won't say verbatim. In my mind, I'm gonna use the
Please
dad.
do.
I'm gonna use the
I'm
dad.
really excited about
Listen,
this.
I have a college son, but I still think I'm young and cool.
Okay.
So
Which means you're not. We'll talk about that later. We can talk about it off camera.
My suit, I would call this drip. So I would tell if I was.
Do kids still say drip? I thought
know.
it was like Riz.
So Lane would walk. Okay. Lane would walk in and he would tell all the kids, "Hey, look, we're gonna get you rizzed up. You guys are gonna get the ladies. You guys are gonna have all this cool stuff." No, honestly, Lane understands what a teenage athlete is going through, and I think that's the biggest point. It's not about the program. It's how can I relate to this kid? And for him, he's probably out there selling them a dream. And whether it's true or not, we know how recruiting goes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get you to the NFL. I'm going to get you to where you want to be. Just tell me what you want, and I'm going to make that happen. And kids gravitate to that. If you
They're
can
like,
tell them,
let's do this, hotty toddy.
Yeah. If you tell them they're going to be a first-round pick, I mean, I'm going. That's.
See, but I'm going down a rabbit hole here. I can't remember what it was. I was talking to my mom about something. I'm like, if I was bad at it, would you tell me? Do you think enough parents give athletes the reality of the situation this day in athletics.
Ooh.
And
No,
that
that's
is what
tough.
I'm getting at. So if
No.
your parents aren't being 100% with you, and your coach is like, you're a first-round
But
pick.
that's the problem. It starts at home. We say this in the real world, right? It starts at home.
Yeah.
Parents have this delusional, unrealistic vantage point of their child. Hey, my kid's the best on the team, whether they're good or not. And when you hear that your whole life, and then you go to a situation where maybe you do get recruited and you're good enough to play at the collegiate level, but the guys
But
you're
you're not
next to,
the guy.
guys you're next to, they're also the greatest.
He's a dog.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just like
It's hard to
mid-dog.
it's hard to really explain that to a kid. And I respect all the coaches that are honest with their players about, hey, look, this is where I see you. This is what you need to do to improve. But I can put you in those situations to help you improve to get where you want to get. You're not there yet. But some coaches don't care about this. Some coaches want the top recruiting class, or they want the guy that they feel might be a top player on Vanderbilt. He might go to Vandy and actually play, and he might come to Ole Miss.
I mean, to be fair, I could be a top player on Vanderbilt.
Well, they are looking for some. They had 25
Wait, didn't
they had 25 transfers.
What was her name? The kicker.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
I could do that.
I think her name was Sarah.
She kicked a 30-something yard field goal.
I played soccer. I could kick a 30-yard field goal. Give me 10 minutes to warm
Listen.
up. I could do it right now. No, I'm not even blowing smoke right now. I'm being so
A&F
real.
challenge. We're going to get you out on the football field, and we're going to
Okay,
stream it. We're going to stream it.
What do I get if I get to do the stream next year
Yeah,
if
well,
I do it?
yeah,
Because
we'll
that
fi-
will give me extra motivation to want to do it again next year.
30-yard
figure it
field
out.
goal?
Yeah. What? Y'all looking at me like I'm crazy.
No. I'm just saying, kicking a soccer ball. I can't do it.
Okay, to
But
be
field
fair,
goals are hard.
in high school, the guys didn't have a kicker, and they wanted me to come, and I refused to be like that girl. You know, there was always that one girl who just wanted to be on the football team for no reason. Was like, I'll just be kicker. I was like, no. But they literally went out there with me, and I kicked 30. I think I hit a 35 when I was. I mean, granted, I was 17. I'm not 17 anymore. That's why I was like, give me 10 minutes to warm up. I'm gonna have to jog it out.
We'll give you some time to practice.
I think kicking a field goal is a lot harder than it looks to be. And if you sometimes you watch on a Saturday morning, you'll have regular college fanatics try to do it, and I've maybe seen one guy get it right, and that's less than.
Well, that's
30
because,
yards
no
too.
offense, men think they're a lot more athletic than they really are. And it's like, no, your rec league doesn't count. I'm sorry. I actually have a Big 12 championship, humble brag. So I feel like I could back it up, okay?
I'm not doubting you
No,
whatsoever. I just want to make sure we get this on the air.
I wish we could roll it back on tape, because when I said that, y'all's eyes popped out of your head like, this girl has no idea.
a 35-yard field goal is a long ways to me. I'm just saying, hey, if you can do it, more power to you, because I could not.
You might have a Big 12 title, but look, all the talk this
He's
week,
like, but
all the talk this week
bring it down.
of the college football game. When I get home this week, I'm going to go win 5 of those Big 12 championships.
He's gonna go
Then
home.
I'm gonna transfer-
That
then I'm
is
gonna
true.
transfer to the SEC,
That is true.
and then I'm going to go to the Big 10. I'm going to skip class because you can do that in the new game mode. Everyone's talking
No
about
way.
it.
That is
I'm so
true.
serious.
I'm not shocking, I bet. I'm not a gamer, so I don't know anything about this game. Although I did see clips that Boone Pickens Stadium actually looked really good in it.
It looked pretty
I
solid.
mean, first of all, I don't really game very much. I haven't played that game in a long
So
time.
you're really not as hip as your son thinks.
No, I try to be a gamer. I buy the PS5, and I get Madden and the college folk. I get it for a week, and I'll try to act like I'm playing. But these kids online, they're
I'm
just so
probably the
good.
one getting you mad.
You're like,
I'm probably
I got a real job,
I'm
and
trying to-
I ain't got time.
I'm trying to run real plays in a video game mode, and it doesn't always work. But these college kids love this game, and they love being in the game, and I think it's a really cool. It has been one of the talks of this media week. It's been about seeing their ratings, seeing themselves play in a game, and their family watching and being able to play with them. I think that's really
You know
cool.
what I love?
Every single day.
You know what I love about it? I know some of these players are sensitive about. Do they have ratings? They have.
Oh,
ratings.
yeah.
And they're like, my speed. I'm not a 54, and it's like.
Or their face scans. You hear
Well, Jackson Dart yesterday said, he's like, my biggest issue wasn't the number. It was that you guys didn't get my face right.
Yeah,
Wait,
they
keep
gave him
talking.
a mullet.
I want to look at
They
what.
gave him
Hold
a
on.
mullet, so I want you to do
Jackson
two things, right?
Dart.
So look up his face scan, right? And
Face
then
scan.
open up another tab.
What
and-
is it?
and-
What is it called? NC.
No, EA Sports College Football 25. Very long name.
Oh, is that the official name?
That's the official name. They cannot use the NCAA stuff anymore. Obviously, a lot of legal stuff with the NCAA.
What we've been
But,
dealing with all week. The Wi-Fi is very poor. There it goes.
But the cake is good though.
The cake. Well, listen, we're gonna get there.
Is good.
We got 10 minutes. Don't
So-
spoil the kicker at the end.
It's because I just.
no pun
got it right
intended.
now.
Kicker, get it?
That's so bad. That's such a dad joke.
Well, there we go again. I'm losing all credibility on this.
You are. We're just going off the rails. We knew this was going to happen the last 10 minutes.
10 minutes left, guys.
But yeah, the ratings. Matter of fact, Malachi Starks, who's the highest-rated Georgia player in the game, was talking about that. Michael said he's.
I was about to say I thought it might be Michael, but
Michael says he's happy with his rating, but a lot of players say they anticipate their ratings going up.
No one said down. I mean,
wait, no, I think that looks like Jackson Dart.
But, okay, so Google this guy named GFed.
I'm hold on. I'm gonna try and show the lovely people at home. I feel like that's pretty good.
Can we do a side by side though? Because Google GFed. All right, maybe the other folks. He's a guy that goes to every college campus in America and he walks on their field. Meaning it's like
GFed?
Yeah, GFed.
Oh, I
like K-Fed, but GFed?
He's a TikTok guy.
Yeah,
I've seen
so
that.
like a stadium will be locked
What am I
in
looking
March
for
at 3
here?
p.m.
It's bringing up
His
everything.
face. Oh no, GFed like TikTok maybe. Yeah. So like it's like March and like
Bailey in trouble over here.
Bosses are like, what are you doing?
And
this guy, GFed Go Crazy?
Yes, it
That's
looks
actually
just like him.
wild. So I should click this?
So they use GFed's face on Jackson Dart's body.
That's my prediction.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
he's a devil.
He goes to all these stadiums and like the gate will be locked, but he'll just like keep walking and like find his way into a locker room. You know what I mean? And then like walk on the field at like 8 a.m.
Is that real?
That looks
Okay.
just like.
Or is that real, or does he have connections?
That's
No,
actually
it's real.
No,
because
that's a good. Did you see this? That's actually a good little comparison, Scott.
Yeah,
Should I show the
I think
people?
that's him.
We
I
pulled
think
up his
that's him.
TikTok.
I mean, it could be. I just,
So-
we're going to get sidetracked with this whole video thing. I don't think he's just walking on college campuses, going on the field into locker rooms without people knowing.
There's so many open doors that I know this. I mean, I've been to my.
Don't you wish?
there's so many open
what are they called? Like the FBI sketch people? Like they walked in and they're like, "All right, Carson
pencil.
Beck, sit down. Let me sculpt you up."
That's not how they do it.
Oh, it's like cameras everywhere. So like they sit you down.
So
They got
artificial
lights around you.
intelligence. It's a whole rabbit hole you got to get
Yeah,
into.
Actually, so like if you like downloaded an app on the App Store, you could scan your face into a game.
By the way, you know way too much about this.
I like grew
He's
up.
a gamer nerd.
I'm
Give
not a
us some
gamer.
credit.
Hold on a minute. But back in my heyday,
I'm sorry. We've gotten to the point where I just roast everyone until something funny happens.
back in my heyday, I'm not gonna lie.
Back in your
I was probably
heyday,
the
how
one
old are
making
you?
I don't want to give out.
Okay, don't do it.
No.
But you're just a baby.
I'm about to say he's not. He's
I'm probably not as old as you think.
Okay. Okay, so let's circle back to SEC Media Days. We're getting off the rails talking about gaming in everyone's face. What team? No, this is what I want. What is your hottest SEC take this season?
I think Texas goes back to the college football playoff. I don't know if it's hot, but people
That's
keep
not
saying
hot. That's lukewarm.
people keep saying that they're going to have a little bit of an adjustment period. I just don't buy that. So maybe it's lukewarm, but I just don't think they're
Did
going to
you
fall off
hear
on it.
about? I did some capital J in journalisming. Horns down penalty.
Yeah.
Did you hear about this?
yeah. So there's no penalty.
I talked to John McDavid about it. He sat right here, and I was like, listen, we could have a real conversation, or we can have the conversation I want. And he's like, what's the conversation you want? I said, is it a penalty? He goes, well, it depends. Basically, it's only a penalty if it's taunting.
if you do it in front of somebody's face or like to
So
them.
what I told him, I was like, okay, so Carson Beck rushes in a 5-yard touchdown, goes to the fan base, kind of goes like this and goes on his way. He goes, it's probably fine. I said, okay. Carson Beck rushes in a 5-yard touchdown, gets in the Longhorn's face and is like, and he's like, yeah, that's taunting.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, but we're not soft anymore. Do you remember in the Big 12 when they finally made it a penalty? And
It was the dumbest.
it made everyone want to do it more. They're like, yeah, it's worth the penalty. Let's do this.
I
Like-
wonder if it still is though now. I mean, Texas is gone, so like, would you still get in trouble in the Big 12?
yeah, I know.
We need someone
Out
to
of
test
conference
that.
game. I mean, what are you gonna do?
You know, maybe we should get Ollie Gordon on that. You know, he's already in fire. Like, it might as well just add to it, like rushing your first touchdown,
Those
horns
50
down.
carries are getting Ollie Gordon. I think.
Leave Ollie Gordon alone. He's trying. He's trying to be a better person. Gundy's taking off a lot of the heat for him.
Yeah.
The taunting thing has always been dumb. It really is. Unless you're in somebody's face doing it, I think that's a penalty that should never happen. It's entertainment, and the bigger the college football game grows, the more money that's piled into it. The ESPN money, the ABC money, all that stuff is going to play a part. People want to see entertainment. They want to see you celebrate. It's only going to get, I guess, worse, better for me.
I'm
worse
also,
for the people that don't like it.
maybe I'm just the worst type of person. Sports is so much better when people are petty.
Talk trash.
Well, I
Everyone needs a villain, and if we all, not all of us, like all, but if like the SEC players would like to, in unison,
horns down against Texas in games, I am for it. Be petty, make the sport better, make it more fun, drive storylines.
I think conferences in the NCAA don't like fun sometimes. I mean, we see it in the pros all the time, and of course, they have to regulate everything. I feel like they always take away something fun, whether it was like a little fake slide a few years ago or whatever it is. They're always restricting one thing or two.
Yeah.
But I think over the course we've seen that. I mean, remember when the NFL went to that, you can't celebrate at all. You couldn't do any team celebrations. They quickly had to shift because the fans don't want to see it. The fans want to see the entertainment, especially casuals, right? The casual fan, maybe not for us because we're going to be invested in the game no matter what, but the person that might not really be interested in college football might get entertained by something that happens when somebody's celebrating. So I think there's a fine line between regulating that and allowing it. And I'm sure over time as it continues to grow, they'll find a way to kind of be somewhere in the middle.
My hottest take is, you know, the fade mullets that everyone's rocking these days with like the faded side, but it has the mullet.
Yeah, isn't it called something? I forgot what that's
Is
called.
it? Is there a correct term?
Yeah,
Am I too old that I don't know
I
it?
hear it all the time. I don't know. It's like a fringe
Jackson
or
Dart?
Is it?
Is that
I
what it's
mean,
called?
I don't know.
Well, Jackson said he didn't have a mullet. That was his big thing for he's like, I don't have a mullet.
He kind of looks like I don't know.
Listen, I like it. I'm here for it. I'm
Gundy,
team.
call it the Gundy, baby.
Well, Gundy doesn't have like the fade on the side,
Right.
and like he does have the mullet, and he kind of was the first to do it. But I'm talking about like the young cats who get the fade with the mullet, and they like.
You know how it started, right?
No.
So it was actually started by baseball players because I know this because my son's a baseball player.
Okay.
They like the way their hair looks coming out of the helmet or out of their hat. So it's shaved on the
Okay.
sides a little bit. You can't see it, but then the back, you want that flow to still come
Yeah.
out the back of your hat or helmet. And then it took off. Like teenagers just started getting it everywhere.
They were
It's
like,
crazy.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I kind of feel like Patrick Mahomes did it like the little, it was
He did.
more
It's
like
like
a
a
faux
faux
hawk.
yeah, it was like the
but
little
like,
hawk.
he really had that all throughout college and everything and still rocks it to this day.
I want to give you a really quick. I guess not a hot take, but
Okay,
being a
give it.
bulldog
Let's
and
do
all,
it. Let's do it.
Georgia goes undefeated and wins the national championship.
Whoa. Okay, no, that's actually wild.
Like-
because their schedule is insane.
3 road games, obviously, that we're watching with the Texas, Ole Miss, and Bama. They sweep it all. They go on to win the national championship undefeated.
Which is wild. That means they would win at the Benz 4 times in a row.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Alabama speaks tomorrow. What are the chances they go, bowl ineligible? I mean,
Not going to happen.
The
Too
foundation,
much talent. Too much talent.
Yeah, and
Too much
the
talent.
foundation is there. Like I get Nick Saban's not there, but
Jalen DeBoer proved he's a good enough coach.
you got to protect a protected Ferrari. Just keep it
Like,
on the
yeah.
track.
If I'm in Vegas, I'm not taking that bet. But I've been in the car many times, thinking, but what if it happens? 'Cause maybe I want it to.
8-4 Alabama team?
Maybe I want it to happen.
7
I'm not
and
sure.
5.
What
But,
I want to know is what is the best food you've eaten this weekend, because
We know what yours is.
I know what mine is. My lovely photog Lee Smith, I had a bite of the chocolate sheet cake and was like, yo, I got to get back to this stream, but I need more of that chocolate sheet cake.
It was so good.
That was good.
Did you have
I
some?
had that. I just actually, before I came on here, I was hoping there was none on my teeth when I was talking. So,
Well, we have like 2 minutes left,
That
so
was-
I'm going to eat with chocolate.
that
and
was
top
very,
with
very
chocolate.
good.
I need to knock it on the mic, though.
I'll say this too. They also had this thing called a mac and cheese.
Wait.
It was not
no,
mac and
it was.
cheese.
It says mac. It says mac and cheese
It
salad.
was terrible. It was trash. It was the worst thing.
Whoa,
I ever had.
whoa! I thought it was good.
I thought,
Awful.
too, I'm like, maybe I was just really hungry and I
It
haven't eaten all day.
It tasted like someone
Okay.
poured chemicals in mac and cheese.
Well,
It was
obviously
terrible.
we're in Texas, and Texas people love their Dr. Pepper.
Yes.
They have 50 flavors over there. Have you tried any of them?
I tried the strawberries one, and I tried there was a
Oh,
oh my gosh!
Oh boy.
Bailey just got chocolate cake all over the equipment.
She will never
I
eat
didn't.
cake
Don't
on
worry, Ross.
camera ever again.
Don't worry, Russ.
The coconut
It's
one they can
amateur
keep.
hour.
The coconut one they can keep.
You guys are haters.
I don't do
tried
coconut.
I tried the strawberries and cream zero. Terrible. Another terrible thing.
That one, I mean, that one looked like a no.
There's still 2 days left. We might get something better.
I
Caleb
just
Williams
hope,
likes it.
I just hope that you guys have better sports takes than food takes. Otherwise, everything we just talked about for the last 30 minutes is just as doo-doo as the strawberries and cream Dr. Pepper.
That's why we're in sports and not on Food Network.
I feel like I could be on Food Network, not in a cooking capacity because I can't
Just
cook.
eating?
I'm a woman in sports, for God's sake. I can't. I don't belong in a kitchen. I can't even make a sandwich.
So just the taste testing basically.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
that'd be
like
Well,
great.
somebody's got to eat.
People
food.
can cook
Yeah.
for me, and I'm like, no.
yeah.
That works.
Yeah.
Or like
works.
I could help in the kitchen. I could be like the Yes Chef. Do you guys watch The Bear? No. Now we're just
No.
getting into
No,
it.
don't know
But
what
I'm
that
just
is.
saying, like I could be like, Yes Chef. What do you need? Here's your salt and pepper.
Oh, So that's like a
sous chef.
A sous chef.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what a yes chef is, but a sous chef I
I
know.
just
what
say
that is.
yes, chef, because it's good.
Say yes to whatever they say. I
Yeah.
get it.
They
Pretty
also
much.
take all the abuse and the screaming and yelling too.
That I can take that.
Okay.
I got thick skin. Can also make field goals. You guys still don't
We're
believe
gonna
that,
find
but
out.
it's fine.
A&F challenge.
You know what? We're gonna find a football tomorrow. I'm just gonna start. Can you imagine we set it up and we'll just start kicking
Just have
stuff
people
here?
line up and then
Yeah.
use their arms.
Who can do it the best?
uprights.
Who can do it the best? Well, that is a wrap on day 2 of your Media Days Craze, powered by Gray Television. Thanks to Aaron and Scott for joining me. That's a wrap. Join us tomorrow for day 3.